told you once before that that was then. Now you're like a stranger in my bed. We know that our love is at an end, but you act like you don't see and I pretend. Feel it inside. Anything can change in the light. They're singing just for you tonight. 'Cause baby, you're the star in my eyes. Can you feel it inside? Anything can change in the light. They're singing just for you tonight. 'Cause baby, you're the star in my eyes. Say it like you mean it, do you trust me now? Call it like you see it, I'll be burning. I wish I could feel it like I do. Everything I got, I give it all for you. Say it like you mean it, do you trust me now?
Hello, everybody.
Anything can change in the light. They're singing just for you tonight. 'Cause baby, you're the star in my eyes.
Hey, Michael.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Oh, wait. Oh, sorry. Are you there? Can you hear me?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Okay. Yeah. Sorry. I just want, how do you want this to do the feedback on those? I was just trying, there's probably something I should have done in advance. I'm sorry, but I was just looking at the email and I see there's a PDF file. Is that what I'm supposed to have? What do you
Yeah.
want? How do you want to do this?
I made it a fillable PDF. So
Fillable.
if you just want to take notes and then fill it out and email it later.
How do I, okay, I suppose I need to well, okay, I'm just looking at it in my email now. So, okay. All right. I don't have a lot of experience with fillable. Oh, okay. So I can, oh, okay. And so then is there going to be several of these? Should I then make a copy of it for each team?
Yeah. Yeah. We should have, should only need 3 of them today. One for Justin, one for Matthew, and then just one for the whole web project class, because they're just presenting one project as a class.
All right. Okay. Sorry for being a little dense here.
No, you're fine.
All right. I'm going to try. All right. So
Hey, Troy. Hello. Oh, you're muted, Troy.
Okay, now you can talk. Say hi.
Hello. Hi.
Hey.
Looks like you got all the grandkids.
Yeah, mom's at the store.
She's back.
Oh, she's back.
Yeah. She's just going back there.
Yeah.
Hello.
Yeah, do you see yourself?
Hello.
Oh, he knows mom.
Oh, okay.
You want to say bye?
Okay.
Bye.
Bye, honey. Good to see ya.
My grandson's upstairs doing his homework, so if he starts crying or something, we'll turn it off. We'll make sure. You never know, and there might be all of a sudden a breakdown when it comes to the homework.
Okay. I think we're just waiting on Matthew Denholm to log in, and then we should be good to go.
Shay, who is that lady driving the car there in your picture? I should know that. That looks familiar, but
I think her name is Janet Lee from Psycho.
okay.
Yeah.
And it looked familiar, but I just couldn't. One of those.
Yeah.
Who is that? Moments.
It's never, this picture has never shown up in any other Zoom meeting, and now it is for this one. So lucky, I guess. I don't know.
She looks like she just stole the money.
Yeah.
When you say do you have something where that's random as to which picture shows up? You mean? I'm not quite.
No,
Did you
picked
pick that?
I picked
picture?
it, but it's never shown up before, and now it is. So I don't know why it changed that.
Hmm.
Well,
Mm.
mine's different too because I switched computers, so I think
Yeah.
it remembers.
Yeah.
What you
Yeah, I
set
have
up
that
on it.
too. I have like 3 different computers that I use for Zoom meetings, depending on the setting. Can you guess where that bridge is behind me? I'm sure you won't, but
Nope.
that is on the Antietam battlefield, Civil War battlefield in Maryland.
Oh, okay.
That wasn't the main battle where you think of Antietam with the 60,000 dead in one day. That's about a half mile away from that. But there was also some skirmishes around that bridge too. So anyway, kind of a history thing. But
All right. Well, I think
like the picture.
we're all here. Matthew just joined us, so there might be some more people logging in as we go here. So I wanted to thank our guests for joining us today. So we have 2 digital media senior students that are going to be presenting their senior capstone projects, Matthew Denholm and Justin. So we're going to have Matthew go first, and kind of what they'll do is give an overview of their project, maybe go through a little presentation, and then probably in Matthew's case, he's been working on a 3D animation, pretty complex video, so he'll go show that. And then Justin has a big branding projects that he's been working on. So with that, I'm going to let Matthew go ahead and take over. If you want to share your screen, go ahead and I'll let you take it away.
Okay, there's quite a few other hoops I had to get around to get in here. It wasn't letting me in earlier. Okay. So you can see my screen okay now?
Looks good.
Okay. So for my project, I started working on a 3D animation project. Started this back in December, actually, before school started. So let me get it going here. If it will go. My computer is being slow right now. Okay, there we go. Yeah.
Yep, there we go. See it.
This was a neat little design I found on PowerPoint, so I started with that. So the idea behind this animation was based on a concept I discovered about 10 years ago. Computer animated music. If you've never seen the Animusic series, I recommend you check that out because some fascinating stuff. The idea behind that is that you sync music in a computer animation with virtual instruments. So in the case of one of the most popular ones, the marble machine. I don't know if you've heard of that, but that's a pretty cool instrument that's been made by someone over in, I believe it's over in Sweden or Switzerland, one of the two. So it's somewhere over in Europe. There's a guy over in Europe that's made a marble machine that plays music with like 2,000 marbles. It's pretty cool. There's a video that was based on that. So my goal with this animation was to see how well I could replicate the 3D aspect with a virtual environment video. But the twist to it, I didn't want to replicate it exactly. I wanted to, instead of using actual virtual instruments, use natural occurrences that sync the music instead. And it'll make more sense once I actually play the video. So some of the, I guess I can get to the concepts after I play the video. So I'll go ahead and show you that right now. You just swap screens here. And let me know if you can't hear sound.
I'm not hearing any sound right now.
Let's see. There should be a little bit of wind blowing. You should be able to hear some wind
Okay.
blowing.
Yep, I hear it.
So that kind of gives you the idea of what went into it. Kind of gives you the idea of what the other animations I was trying to base it off of are about. So if we go back to the presentation, a lot of these concepts are based on some other things. I was trying to find natural occurrences that could act as instruments. And if you look over here on the main picture, icicles were one of the main things. Caves kind of played into that as well. The auroras were another big one to act as the voices in the background of the song. And the ripples on the water were another idea, but that ended up not working as much in the animation as I wanted it to. But it was still another aspect of the animation I wanted to put in there. Some of the initial environment concepts started over here with the mountains in the background, which kind of made it in there. Geysers were acting as another instrument in that as well. Had to look up some video for that. But then just a line of it didn't quite work out for me, so then I looked at some different concepts of looking at it in a pool, which kind of made it in there as well. So that kind of it's an evolving process that kept evolving up until I started rendering it out, actually. And as you saw in the at the end of the video, the two main programs I used were Affinity and Blender. PureRef is another one, which is what you saw with all the other images on there. It's basically a big plane. You can just copy and paste images onto that plane, and it'll save them for you. Any image online, just copy and paste. You can reference from that. So it's basically just a big reference book in a way. So as far as some questions I would be anticipating about this, how long did this render take? It took about 10 hours on 3 different computers. I have 3 different computers here at home that I used to render this video out on. It was rendered using Blender's Eevee render engine. That's more of a real-time render engine. You lose the lack of realism as a result of that, but it would have been much faster than the other render engine I would have wanted to use, which would have taken well over a week on my 3 computers to render it out fully. This was an idea before class began. Discovered this about 10 years ago, but this idea for this film came about 2 years ago. So, any major roadblocks? Not in creating the project, but rather the rendering of the film. Like it takes a lot of compute power and it takes a lot of time. So those are the 2 major roadblocks for me when it comes to creating a film. I overcame that difficulty with choosing a new render engine. A couple of years ago, this wouldn't have been possible. But yeah, so Eevee's a lot better as far as getting stuff done on a deadline, but it's not great if you're looking for realism or high quality per se. So that's pretty much all I've got to say about this. Do you have any other questions you'd like to ask me?
Sure, I do. I'm curious about, you said you used 3 computers to render. So can you kind of explain what that means then? Is that what you would call a render farm, or did you assign different clips to each machine? How did that work?
So yes and no. Currently it's not set up like a render farm, but it is distributed amongst multiple computers like you would a render farm. I took the same scene, but I rendered out different sections of that scene on each computer. So like one computer got a third, another computer got a third, and then the third computer got a third of the film. And it rendered each third of it individually.
And then, so how was it all stitched together in the end then?
So that was stitched together in the video, in Blender's internal video editor later on with the different clips and the music. put it all in there, and then I rendered it out one more time. It renders out much faster in a video format than it does in a 3D scene format.
Gotcha.
And also just a note, I did put the link to Matthew's video in the chat, so you guys can watch that on your own computers. I know that when we stream videos and stuff on Zoom, it doesn't work real great. So you'll get a better feel for the pace of the video and the sound and everything if you watch that on your own computer. So,
Hey, Matt.
yeah.
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry, Michael.
No, go ahead, Zoo. Go
I
ahead.
have a couple questions, if that's okay. Okay,
Yep.
Matt, can you just articulate again the purpose of the project? Actually, I have really 3 questions. Can you re-articulate the purpose of the project? Did you have a goal? And if so, what was it? And are there broader applications for further work on this?
So the goal of this was for me to challenge my skills in making 3D films. Which, yes, I made another 3D film, and I'm pleased with it. I wish I could have done better or had more time to work on this project to make it better. What was another question you had?
Well, the real purpose, and I assume that's to improve your skills, right?
The purpose is to improve skills, but another purpose of this film is to express my thoughts and feelings about how the world operates and works through an artistic means. So
okay,
that's
so the third question.
Go ahead.
Well, the third question was more about a broader application. So that's, you're kind of getting there by stating your purpose, I think.
Yes. So the applications I have for making a 3D film is to apply it in an entertainment industry, because I want to make more of this stuff. I want people to see things from a different perspective. So
I thought that was the case. I just wanted to hear you say it. Thanks.
Yep.
So Matthew, I got one question for you. So how do you feel this this project and the process will help prepare you for maybe things like this when you get out in the workforce and in the industry and are working on stuff like this?
So by doing things like this, I'm practicing and improving my skills in a workflow that would be used in the actual industry. The animation industry has a big pipeline going from storyboard concepts all the way to the final rendering process and compositing, editing, all that kind of thing. So by me working on a film myself, I'm getting experience in each individual section of the pipeline, which means that I can go wherever I need to be in a big project to assist or improve on areas that are struggling.
Okay, and then so kind of a follow-up question then. I just thought it'd be good for all the faculty and everybody to kind of, what are your future plans once you graduate? What's your goals as far as career-wise?
The ultimate end goal is to get to the movie making industry, because I want to be part of the team that makes the good movies. Maybe not necessarily with Disney specifically, but places like DreamWorks or Sony Animation. I know they make some good movies now and then too. Would be ideal places I want to end up working in the long run. In the short term, right now, making better advertisements than the ones you see on TV these days, because I don't think they're very good. But that's a short-term goal I'm aiming for at this point. So,
okay, thank you. Any other questions from faculty or visitors?
I just had a question about why did you choose Affinity? Is that a tool that's used a lot in the industry, or is that something that you just kind of found on your own and chose that over Photoshop or whatever?
it is a newer software. It's more of a competitor to Photoshop. So I'm also on the side of competition is good. But it is used by professionals out there as well. Affinity is actually a cheaper alternative to Photoshop, even though it has basically the same capabilities, in my opinion. So, because Adobe charges like a lot every year, whereas Affinity was used with a one-time license. It's $50 one time. You don't have to pay anything more for it. So for personal use, it made sense for me.
Okay, thank you.
I can respect a cost savings application like that. That seems like a reasonable thing for a student to do.
Okay. Any other questions from anybody? I guess one last question. What was, you kind of talked about the challenges of this. What was the thing you most enjoyed with this project?
The thing I most enjoyed about making this was just experimenting with the different tools that were available. Blender recently got a new update with all of their new look and new tools and new engine and all that. So the fun in this was just exploring what's possible. And one of my favorite parts of that film was creating the auroras. That felt really good because I've not seen anyone use it in the way that I created it yet. So.
All right. Well, thank you, Matthew. I'll give you a round of applause. It's a little weird over Zoom. So, all right. Okay, Justin, you're up.
Okay, so let me see. Hit this, so you guys should be able to see my screen now, correct? Oh,
Yes.
my goodness.
Yep.
Hopefully my dog doesn't like go crazy during this.
You're good. Yep. We see. So go ahead.
So hit the full screen there.
And maybe just give a little introduction on about yourself and before you go, in case for visitors that might not know who you are.
Okay, so basically what I was doing with this is, it's kind of, for me, it was kind of a monster of a project. It's a lot of things that I hadn't done before. My dog is going crazy. But the whole idea was, in recent history, it's been a big idea that the NBA could naturally expand. And the two primary candidates are kind of Seattle and Kansas City, simply because there's already things in place for an NBA team to go there, and they're pretty large market cities as well. And they kind of know that their major sports teams already are kind of very well supported there. So my whole project was kind of based on the idea of the NBA expanding, and Kansas City just so happens to be chosen, and just kind of going from top to bottom with everything that would kind of need to be put into that. So then going from there, basically what I'm gonna go over kind of in sections of the branding, the marketing, merchandise, and the designs for the team. Branding is kind of the big chunk, and it's definitely the monster within these four. So starting off with branding, the team name, naturally, when it comes to Kansas City, everyone kind of knows the Chiefs, everyone knows the Royals, and most people know of Sporting Kansas City. Sporting Kansas City is the MLS team. They're pretty well-known soccer team throughout the nation. Naturally, a lot of people in this area really love their Chiefs and Royals, and these two, with the Chiefs and the Royals, are what I really wanted to go off of, simply because they kind of have that position of power and royalty and all that stuff when I was choosing the team name. And then I just so happened to remember back in the day prior to the Royals, there happened to be the Kansas City Monarchs that played in the Negro League and whatnot, where you had Satchel Paige and just a few other like major players back then, with Jackie Robinson, who also played in Kansas City for a year. And there's a lot of history with that team. And also Kansas City is very, very, I guess, proud of kind of that history of that team, even back to the fact that people get really excited when the Royals kind of have their whole game every now and then kind of honoring the Monarchs. So I decided to actually go with the Monarchs because it plays into that whole power and royalty idea that I wanted to keep with, that goes along with the Chiefs and the Royals, while also bringing in something that the city and nation kind of already have a history with, and a lot of people are really, really happy with that name already. Not necessarily for a basketball team, but a lot of people know the name of Kansas City Monarchs because of the history it has. And then moving on with the colors for the branding, obviously the Chiefs have that really vibrant red and yellow. The Royals have their nice royal blue and gold, and Sporting Kansas City has not quite a navy blue and that powder blue. And naturally, I wanted to kind of make something that was in a way mixed of all of these, because it was going to play into, first off, it's a mix of all of them, and also it just kind of plays into what I wanted in general. So what I ended up coming up with was this kind of royal purple and a little bit of a lighter shade of gold for at least the two primary colors. And then this next page will go over the exact Pantones, naturally, because in the print industry and just this in general, Pantones are very, very important. So the idea of the purple, not only does it kind of mix that red and blue and to come up with a purple, but purple is also kind of notorious for the whole idea of power and royalty. So it mixed in perfectly with it. And the gold, naturally, crowns, jewelry, all sorts of stuff. It's very royal in a sense. And then the lavender, I really wanted to bring that in just because it would give them a unique look. And I mean, no one in the NBA and just professional sports in general in America, they don't use lavender. So I thought it would be a very just unique thing to add in. And then when it came to font, which is something that I'm very, very picky about, I wanted something, as you can kind of see off to the right, I wanted something simplistic, timeless, and bold. What I mean by that is a lot of teams, especially recently, have really kind of went with an over-designed font in a way, and within a couple years, the fans don't like it anymore. And then they're just kind of begging for a new redesign. And that kind of goes right in with timeless. It's something that needs to be maybe 10 years from now. It still looks good. People still love it. And naturally, bold's going to kind of play into the whole idea of power and just sports in general. It makes it a little bit more aggressive, and aggressive fonts are kind of what people want for sports logos. So I came up with this Clean Sports font, the Premier Sans, and the Gin. Those were kind of my final three. Actually, I think they were pretty much the only three that I had initially chose from, because I managed to find the perfect one in the end, at least in my opinion. I ended up kind of narrowing it down simply to the Gin font. The Monarchs on like the Clean Sports, I wasn't a big fan once I kind of compared it to the others. It just didn't quite seem like something that maybe 5 or 6 years from now would really be a popular font to use for a sports logo. The Premier Sans just seemed a little bit too basic for me. And Gin I thought was a nice balance of stylistic, but also very, very basic. It's just your typical kind of block font with a little bit of stylizing in there. So I thought it went pretty well with what I was looking for. So when it came to logos, naturally with Monarchs and just royalty in general, lions are always kind of thrown into that whole idea. So I knew I wanted to do a lion. So I started off with this two-dimensional lion graphic and added, that little lavender eye and everything. And I knew one thing I really wanted to do was kind of hide a KC into the main. So you can see kind of on the right, that's not a secondary logo. That's literally the KC I've hidden. I should be able to mark it. It's just kind of right in here. I decided that first off, I'm a big fan of when teams are able to do that. It's just a nice little hidden message. Not everyone really knows is there. I think it's hidden in a way that if you don't know you don't know it's there, or you're not really looking for it, you're not really going to see it. But as soon as you do see it, you can't really see the KC in there. And I just thought it was kind of a cool little feature to add in. And then going from there, off of the line, I thought initially I really wanted to do a crest logo. So I came up with this one on the left, and I was really, really liking it. I was a big fan of it. And I just so happened to stumble upon, when I was just messing around with colors, with this black alternative on the right. But then I was informed by my fiance, and she reminded me that that looks strikingly similar to the Royals logo. So then I kind of scrapped this one and said I wasn't going to use it as a primary logo, and decided to do more of this speed with the circle logos and everything. And the left one was what I initially had. I ended up going more towards the one on the right with the gin font on the border, and added in the little diamond pattern on the sides to kind of eliminate some of that purple that's just in there. It really didn't look good without at least something there to break up the color a little bit. So ultimately, I had to have a few more alternative logos. It's kind of unheard of in Kansas City if you don't have a KC logo. So I started messing around with these a little bit. And I'm still a big fan of the one on the top left. It just didn't go with the rest of everything else, really. It kind of, to me, screams like a really cool 1980s logo. Like, this would have been awesome back then. But it doesn't go with anything else that I really have going right now. And I kind of, from here, created the basics of what I really ended up going with, or at least this led into what you see on this page, which are some more KC logos, but in the gin font that I really liked. And then the Monarchs font logo, kind of italicized, just to make it a tad bit sportier and edgier, I guess. And then I went from here to kind of decide if I wanted the diagonal or horizontal KC logo. And naturally I made alternatives with and without the crown. So then my primary logo, kind of like I stated, I went with the big circle logo. I thought everything mixed really well with it. It worked well on just about everything, with from the court to t-shirts to anything I wanted to put it on. It was going to look pretty good. And then logos, I kept the crest logos to use as an alternative. I had the font logos with the Monarchs, and then this bottom one's just an alternative because naturally this purple, gold, and black one up here didn't look exceptionally well on lavender, so I wanted to make one specifically to put on lavender. And then I made a couple of variations and ultimately went with the horizontal KC logo where they kind of overlap, because if you look at the Kansas City Chiefs logo and the Royals logo, they have the diagonal thing going for them, and I just thought this was a little bit more unique. The font is already unique compared to those two, but also the idea of making them kind of overlap, I think it looked cool, and also, you know, made it a little bit different. And so that kind of finishes up for branding, which is the big chunk. Now, when it comes to marketing, and also I should probably state this prior to moving on, naturally, all of that stuff you just saw with logos and everything, that's all Adobe Illustrator, 100%. It was all hunting down things that it kind of, I thought were cool, and then simply going in with a pen tool and making my my logos and whatnot, and just kind of freestyling it with the pen tool and then going from there. Now with marketing, it'll kind of go over the sponsorship, because that's a big thing in the NBA, and then just your typical marketing stuff with billboards and tickets. So sponsorship, it's a big thing in the NBA right now. It brings in money, and it's a good fan experience thing just for the team in general. So good fan experience typically means you're going to bring in more money, because more fans are going to want to go to your games, which is a big thing. So everything is pretty similar. In the last maybe 3 or 4 years, the NBA started putting these company logos on the jerseys on the left chest that you can kind of see with the Phoenix Suns jersey there with the PayPal logo. So I started looking at potential sponsors. These are all from Kansas. I didn't actually realize any of these well, I knew Garmin was from Kansas. I didn't realize these other ones were somehow. And so I started off looking at Koch Industries, Garmin, AMC, and Sprint, and kind of looked into which one makes the most sense for it. So AMC Theaters to me kind of got cut very quickly, simply because it just doesn't seem to mesh with really what I was wanting for it. Naturally, this is kind of just my personal opinion of what I think, what I would choose. Sprint, they already sponsor the Sprint Center, so I didn't think they'd be willing to do the arena and also the uniforms, because both of them are super expensive. And Koch Industries already has the Koch Arena down in Wichita, so I don't think they'd probably be willing to spend a ton of money on jerseys. So ultimately, through process of elimination, I ended up coming up on Garmin, which just so happened to be the one I wanted in the beginning anyway. So that was nice. And then I went to, obviously, onto billboards. So as you all know, billboards are kind of needed in order to gain exposure, especially for some new company, because all of these teams in the NBA are just individual companies. So my initial plan for the billboards and everything, if I were running this whole kind of marketing campaign for them, is I would market obviously very heavy in the Kansas City area, and honestly just throughout Kansas and Missouri in general, and extremely heavy within the Power and Light District. If you don't know what that is, it's just in the heart of Kansas City. It's a very cool place. A lot of businesses are there, and the Sprint Center just so happens to be there as well. So this one here, this is actually in the Power and Light District, and there's a lot of screens. There's also screens right by the Sprint Center as well, and this was a pretty straightforward marketing approach, and I think that's kind of how it would need to be, just kind of introducing that this team does exist. And the bottom line, it's kind of hard to read, but just kind of states how the tickets are available at this certain website and everything, and it's a pretty straightforward approach. Now, with the ones along the highways and just also, there's a lot of these billboards, like this style, your kind of classic billboards just around the Power and Light District and around the Sprint Center, and also just kind of everywhere in Kansas and Missouri. So my idea for this was to make something that's kind of eye-catching. The next page will kind of give a better look at this, but naturally the ball's kind of on fire. It's kind of scorching all the paper off of the wood background, and that's the whole idea of it. And then it just has a hashtag there with the start of the season. The whole idea of the hashtag is simply, if someone's driving down the road or anything, they see the hashtag, or people that know of the team already, they're posting this hashtag on Twitter, and then they're doing the marketing for you. So you pay for a billboard, and then you have thousands of people kind of spreading the word around for you. So ultimately, it's a pretty good approach, in my opinion, to let other people do marketing for your company. So then this is just a kind of a more close-up, as you can kind of see, start of the season, hashtag, and just a ball on fire, scorching everything behind it, kind of like I said. And now moving on to tickets. Tickets in the NBA are pretty straightforward. Nothing too fancy, but they kind of need to be done. And I wanted to do something just a little bit better than what these Philadelphia 76ers tickets look like. So I went with this. Kind of the general idea of what I'm going for here is just naturally this is Paul George. He plays for the LA Clippers right now, so he wouldn't obviously be on the team most likely, but the whole idea is just to get the idea put into kind of your head that if this team did exist, you would have the materials to obviously take pictures and do photo shoots with the players and get images similar to this that you could then kind of have a rotation of maybe 5 or 6 players that the fans are really, really into. And naturally, it might be player 1 on this game, this other player, and it would just go through a rotation. So naturally, they're in a sense kind of collectible, which would then bring in the fans to try to hopefully try to collect them, bring them to more games, which then would ultimately bring in more money for the business. So then moving on to merchandise, the website should be first up. This I meant to do like an actual kind of trying to think of kind of how to, I guess, a URL. I don't know how I can think of that word. But if I can get that, and once this loads, so I just did kind of a very, very base of what this would look like in general. So I have just a picture of the Kansas City skyline kind of down in the Power and Light District with obviously that logo photoshopped on there. And I just thought it ended up looking kind of cool, and it was a good kind of header. Then I went on to do the shopping section where I just put some of the jerseys on here that we'll go way more in depth with the jerseys here in a little bit. And then I have all of these upcoming games. So naturally, when you go up, it just says, well, it's January 18th at 2 p.m. in the Sprint Center. Here's the address and all that. So then if this was a fully functioning website, you could click here, you could naturally buy tickets, but unfortunately it's not an actual business, so you can't really buy tickets to these games. And then down here, I kind of gave them somewhat of a blog in a sense to kind of do a lot of the news stuff that's going on within the NBA. So I had the whole Hall of Fame thing because Kobe Bryant was inducted into the Hall of Fame, and then the MVP race because that was pretty big a couple months ago before this whole thing happened. Down here, this is just an idea. Naturally, there's no videos to really put in here because the team doesn't exist. But the whole idea I have here is in case the team, wanted to put like highlight reels or just kind of fun videos down here, they could naturally have no problem doing that. So then moving back to this, we have fan interaction. I have a little video here, but I'll kind of go over the basis of fan interaction real quick. So if you've ever been to like K-State or KU basketball games or football games or anything like that, naturally mascots are kind of there to, get fans involved in the game, get excited, and make sure it's fun. Naturally, giveaways really get people into it, and it gives people a reason to kind of go to the game as well because they're entertaining and also gives them the opportunity to win things, which is what this video will be when we get there. And then meet and greets are a great way to kind of gain exposure and also make fans feel like they're heard. They can meet their favorite player, they can get autographs, they can get all sorts of stuff. So it's a very, very big thing to get fan interaction kind of right the first time around. So hopefully this will kick up here, and hopefully there's no ad. Of course there's an ad. I don't know how well you'll be able to hear this, but it's just the general idea. This guy nails a half-court flip shot, wins $75,000, and LeBron James tackles it.
He probably enjoyed the hug by LeBron more than the money. Skyhook in American Airlines Arena history, and maybe the greatest hug takedown. Oh, man. Rarely would you see a contest at a time generate the kind of excitement and energy during this hooligan. Might have been the worst looking shot. It was the best end result I have ever seen. It doesn't matter. The form doesn't matter. The shot went in, and it wasn't squish like Jack said.
Okay, so you get kind of the premise there of at least how I would hope things would end up. I think they totally would if this were a thing. Fans really like this whole idea, and the idea is to kind of create that energy in a sense, get people excited. Naturally, that was probably the greatest day of that man's life, being tackled by LeBron James of all people and winning $75,000. So moving on from there, this is another thing. I created this in After Effects. I created all those billboards as well in Photoshop. So hopefully the audio will play in this. There's not much. The whole idea of this little video I made is something that would just play on the Jumbotron after a certain player would make a three-pointer. So for instance, every single player would kind of have one of these and their own individual unique one. So this one here is just kind of obviously a ripoff of Mario. And naturally with this, the whole idea of I wanted to kind of resemble Mario as much as I could. So this is pretty similar to the pause screen. And then naturally here, usually you have, I believe, your points, lives. The name's usually not there, but naturally I thought I'd put the name there so you knew which player it was, just in case you missed it. And then typically you have Mario here with how many coins he has. And I just thought it'd be kind of clever to put the, +3 thing there. And the whole idea of, I know it's kind of quiet after a while. It kind of does little jump noise and coin noise and all that stuff. And that's naturally because the announcer is going to be screaming during it too. So the silence at the end will naturally be filled with a lot of yelling people. Now, souvenirs, it's a great thing. People like free stuff. And the whole idea is if I were kind of doing this for the team, I would naturally say you really need to get some free shirts in there, similar to how this is an Oklahoma City Thunder game where all of these fans bought their tickets for a playoff game. They kind of show up and they just so happen to get a free t-shirt so they could do this kind of striping pattern throughout the entire arena. Gets them really excited. The more excited they get, the louder they get, the harder it is on the other team. So that's kind of the whole premise of it. Season ticket holders naturally get a lot of free stuff too. If you go to K-State games, they get quite a few cool things sometimes. And then naturally, this kind of increases the fan interaction because it's a good reason to get them excited. So then moving on to the team design, which is kind of, in my opinion, the thing I was really, really excited about doing. So starting off with the court, this, I kind of wanted to hit the basics of, there's, your classic court, like this Lakers court on the left here. And then you have a little bit more of a stylized court on the right with the Bucks. I wanted kind of more of a classic court in a sense, but not so classic that it's bland. So ultimately I came up with was this. You got obviously that circle logo in the center, the Sprint Center logos for the advertisement at midcourt, your alternate crest logos inside the three-point line, and kind of a two-tone effect inside the three-point arc and whatnot. And everything is just, nice and purple. You have your Twitter and Facebook handles and all that stuff so people can find you on social media, and also the website URL so they can obviously go to your website, buy stuff, all that stuff. Pretty straightforward design. I didn't want to get too fancy with it because some of them get pretty crazy with city like skylines across the sideline and all sorts of stuff. So when it comes to uniforms, this is where I was going to be super, super picky with myself because it's hard to do a good uniform in my opinion. So I wanted something obviously unique. You don't want to copy the other teams. It's got to be simple. That way in 5 years, typically your complex designs get kind of cycled out because they're cool for a year and then fans don't like them anymore. So you got to have that nice balance that I kind of say of the classic and modern. Not so classic that it's boring, but not so modern that it's going to be out of date in 2 years. So this was the first set that I came up with on Photoshop. They're pretty straightforward. They've got a nice stylized short stripe. These weren't the ones I went with, so they're a little bit smaller. The images are, and they've got that Gin font logo that I have. And then over here, on the right, you've got the Kansas City one. And the reason I didn't really choose this, I didn't like the Kansas City on the purple, and also the Gin numbers. I just didn't like it. To me, these scream like college basketball uniform, and I wasn't really going for that. Then I ended up moving on to these, where it's a little bit different. We got a stripe all the way down the side. The same font logos across the chest, and not much has changed. They're very simple, actually even more basic on the shorts. And I thought these ones were just personally a little bit too basic. So then this is the white jersey I came up with. I call this the pointy design because I can't think of cool names for uniforms. But it's got that same font across the front because I really liked the way the Monarchs look. And off to the right, you can kind of see a close-up of how the actual top looks. You got the Garmin logo on there for the advertisement, all that stuff. I thought the gold numbers were kind of a unique look. Not many teams do that. It looks kind of cool. Purple trace in to make it pop. And the idea of the pointy design on the shorts is just to kind of show, in a way, it's supposed to kind of replicate the crown logo that I have, just the main point in the middle. And I thought it went pretty well with it. And it's a basic enough uniform design that it could last a while, but it's not so basic that it's boring. Like, it's unique in a way. No one really has it. So then I came up with these lavender ones, that same font across the chest, white numbers, purple tracing. Thought it looked nice. Color blocking's a little bit different, and naturally everything's the same. You've got the Garmin logo on there, all that good stuff. And then the lavender, kind of as I said earlier, when I chose lavender as a color, it just adds kind of a unique vibe to the whole team, and because no one uses lavender. Then moving on to this is by far the biggest change I made compared to the last two uniforms you saw. So you still got the Garmin logo, you still got, you know, all your typical stuff. The big change though is that script font that I chose for the Kansas City. I was a big fan of it. I wanted to choose something that kind of looks like it could be used for like a barbecue restaurant in a sense, because obviously Kansas City's well known for barbecue, and the numbers are a little bit different with kind of a drop shadow effect with the white and gold. And I just think these ones came out really, really, really nicely. I'm a big fan of these. So then the final thing I'm going to go over is the City Edition. If you don't follow the NBA, you might not know what the City Edition is. So just briefly, it's kind of these special jerseys that are made every year by Nike to kind of embody what the city is about, I guess, in a sense. Some teams even do courts for it. I wouldn't do a court simply because this would be the first year the team would be a thing. And, you know, there's money to be spent on other things besides spending a ton of money on a brand new, not just one court, but two courts. So naturally the trend is meant to show pride within the city, and it really gets the fans going. It also ups sales for the teams in Nike because it gives something for fans to buy. So what I ended up coming up with, or at least for inspiration, was Kansas City's known for barbecue, but also you have the Kansas City flag because it's nationally known kind of as the city of fountains, because there are fountains everywhere. I believe that it has the second most fountains in the world besides Paris, if I remember correctly. So you have this kind of cool flag with the fountain emblem in the center. Ultimately, I ended up choosing the city flag. It's very, very straightforward. The uniforms are very, very different, but I mean, when it comes to city uniforms, you don't really have to abide by the rules. So I did the same color blocking as the flag. I added that the fountain emblem on the shorts on the side to kind of give them some form of style. And then if you look back on this flag here, everything on the white is just a pretty basic font with black, which is what I went with here. Just very basic fonts, black on white, everything, and kept it very, very straightforward. I thought it ended up coming out. I like them. I think they're cool, but they're also very different. I could understand some people being a little iffy on them, but that's kind of the whole point on them, is they're not supposed to look like your typical uniform. And then that kind of wraps up the whole thing for it. So basically, kind of the reason I chose this as my project was, I mean, I'm very, very into sports, and I hadn't really had a chance to go all in and not just do logos or this little marketing campaign over here with my internship and stuff. With this, I kind of got to do, here's everything. And I got to mess a little bit with After Effects. I got to mess a little bit with Photoshop templates and all sorts of stuff to really make things look realistic. And I don't know, it was fun. I got to do a lot of things I haven't had a chance to do, but that is it.
Okay. That was awesome. Yeah, I'm very impressed by all the thinking that went into this, Justin. I thought you did a great job of, just thinking about everything. So if I was the NBA, I'd pick this they already have all the designs. They just have to pay you a couple million for it, right? So.
Oh, I'd be fine with that.
Justin?
Yes.
Justin, can you hear me?
Yeah.
I've been dying to tell you that I went to a Kansas City Kings game one time, and it was a big, it was very popular in Kansas City. I was really shocked at the time when the Kings moved. Of course,
Yeah.
I was just a kid. I think I was in elementary school then. But anyone else ever been to a Kings game?
I've went to the arena, or at least drove by it, because my dad always kind of points out whenever we go to a Chiefs game. He's like, "Yep, right over there's the arena the Kings played in before they went to Sacramento."
Yeah, they played in the American Royal, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, the old
Which
Kemper
is right
Arena.
next to. It's right next to Kemper Arena.
Mhm.
It was. It's kind of it's an area of town now. It's very, very run down around there now, I think.
Yeah, the bottom. They're so-called the bottoms. Big industrial area.
Yeah, one of the main reasons I guess Kansas City is favored to get a team is because obviously the Sprint Center is already there. So I kind of based it on this team's going to be playing in the Sprint Center if they did exist. Because I think when I looked it up on the seating, the Sprint Center would be, as soon as the team was made, they'd have the second highest capacity in the NBA. And there's not even an NBA team there. Like, it just does concerts and they do the March Madness tournament. That's pretty much all that happens in the Big 12 tournament. They don't have much going on there, so they're not really capitalizing on all the money they could be making.
Okay, so I'll open it up for questions from other faculty and visitors, other students.
What were some of the technical, this is Troy, what were some of the technical things that you learned from this?
I got technical. Do you mean by that? Do you mean like getting more comfortable with certain?
Yeah, right. Technical skills.
Yeah. Or I think one thing that Michael happened to comment on was definitely going through a whole thought process. With this, I wanted to take it as like a professional approach, which I haven't really had to do with designing other logos just for fun. This one was really looking into what there is to kind of go off of, using that as inspiration and making new things out of it in a way that I think it should be made. While what I used to do was literally, this could be cool, I'll just make that real quick and hopefully it looks cool in the end, and it doesn't really take any inspiration from anything. With this, like I said, I had to, because, that's most likely what I would assume would actually happen within the process of all of this. And just trying to do stuff that I haven't really seen before, especially like with that little Mario Jumbotron graphic. I mean, I've never been to an NBA game, but I've been to K-State games and I've been to KU games for basketball, and I've seen other Jumbotron graphics, and they're all like the same thing, just slightly different. And I just wanted to do something that, wasn't the same. So also trying to think. It got me good at taking inspiration. This is a very long answer. I got good at taking inspiration from things, but also just trying to think outside the box and doing things that none of the other teams really have.
So,
Thank you. Very nice job.
I have a related question to that then, Justin.
Hopefully my dog wasn't too loud. He's been whining because my dad's mowing.
It's okay. Hey, so what did you use for your inspiration then? What sources did you use? You said you haven't been to an NBA game before. So how did you get the sense that you were crossing all of your T's and dotting your I's? How did you know that you were doing all of the things that was needed for the team?
I don't know why I can barely hear Bill. Like, can someone else like relay that? I can hear him.
Could anyone hear me?
Yeah, it's a little soft.
Mine's like super soft for some reason.
Well,
So,
go
yeah, I
ahead.
can relay it.
Okay.
So Bill was asking, since you've never been to an NBA game, how did you go about finding some of this inspiration and really digging into the, I guess, Billy said the specifics, crossing your T's, dotting your I's, make sure everything is authentic? Is that kind of?
Yeah. Well, we really didn't see.
I think the main way I went about that is, although I haven't really been to an NBA game, I've watched a lot of NBA games on TV, and to kind of just in general on TV, kind of get glimpses of like, oh, what might play on the Jumbotron, just kind of what happens. And you see all these little things happening, and also you kind of, in the sports world, that's kind of one thing, especially like back to the Jumbotron graphic, a lot of them use kind of the same general idea on a lot of things. So that kind of helped me in just overall with, especially here, making sure things would look like a professional team, because most teams have mascots. Most teams do giveaways. Most teams have a lot of sponsors. They do meet and greets. They have cool things that fans really, really want.
I guess I was.
There we go.
Again. Yeah, I had my levels turned way down and didn't realize it.
I can hear you fine now.
So I was just wondering if you looked at the work of other designers on existing teams or anything like that.
I did a tad to kind of go off of that. So, I mean, it's been a while since I've actually done it. I've just always been interested in sports and also logo design. So maybe 3 years ago, I think 3 or 4, the Minnesota Timberwolves did a whole redesign, and I know they hired a dude from like New Orleans, I believe. And I went like in depth and just looked at all the stuff that man did when they first released the redesign a couple years ago. And naturally I didn't really think of that when doing this. I just think I remembered what he had done and was kind of like, well, I'll take his approach, because I just kind of remembered it. Because ever since then, if I do any rebranding type thing, or someone wants something from me, I kind of look and take the approach he did, which was kind of, you want what you'd kind of expect.
I guess my comment for both you and Matthew then, and would be I think it would be okay and appropriate in this kind of context to show some of your inspirations. I think Matthew referred to some video that was a similar style that he had seen and was inspired by, even a short clip of that to show where he was heading, where that came from. And I think you could do the same thing, show the Timberwolves, just kind of that process.
Yeah, my main thing that I guess took away for inspiration was mainly like on this page here, with like the naming for sure was inspired by this. The colors were kind of inspired by that. The logo itself, though, at least the approach, I guess in a way was kind of inspired by the Timberwolves guy. I didn't even think about him really naturally in my mind. I just kind of have practiced that approach. So by now, that's just kind of the approach I take on it, I guess, in a sense. I didn't even think about that, but
okay,
makes sense.
Thank you.
Okay, any other comments or questions for Justin? No? Okay. Well, Justin, I'll give you a round of applause too. Great project. You did a really good job. I appreciate all the thinking and in-depth work that you did with this project. So yeah, great job. So real quick, kind of what's your plan now as you graduate? I know we talked about it a little bit, but maybe some of the other faculty might want to hear kind of where you're thinking of as far as your career going forward.
At least one thing I would want to do is naturally something at least kind of part of what this is, because a lot of what I did here was what a whole team would kind of go in and tackle. But I think being a logo designer or a uniform designer would be pretty cool. Also, just working for a marketing agency in general, because a lot of naturally you get to do a lot of cool stuff there. Right now, I don't really know what companies I'd want to work for. Naturally, if Nike wanted to hire me, I'd be fine with that. But I'm waiting to hear back from like a couple marketing agencies in Manhattan right now to see if maybe I got on there for when I moved there in August. And off of that, just kind of going with it. But I'd prefer to kind of work in some form of sports industry, hopefully.
Yeah. Cool. All right. Awesome job. So we're going to take just a few minute break here, and then our web project class is going to present their project. So Justin and Matthew, you guys are welcome to stay and watch that, or if you want to log off. And I know you guys are, it's usually exhausting after you do a presentation, so it's up to you. You guys are wanting to log off and check out, that's cool. So cute dog.
I thought I would put the culprit who's been making all the noises on here and distracting me.
Yeah.
He's kind of a baby because my dad's not in sight, so he wants to cry.
All right. Well, web project guys, if you want to start, if you want to get your screens pulled up and kind of get prepared, we'll start here in about 3-4 minutes. Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started here. So I want to thank our visitors for coming and joining us. We have my web development project class here to present their final project. They've pretty much been working on all semester. So a little bit of a background. With this project every year, we use a real client. So our students get experience working with clients. And so this year is a little bit unique. My wife, who's a professor in the College of Health and Human Sciences in the Communication Disorders department, she had a problem that she came to me, and I thought it would be a great project for our students to work on for speech therapy for some of her graduate students that she supervises to develop an online tool to help with some speech therapy. So all the students will kind of go over that, and I have my wife on here as well. She's our client for this project, so thanks to her for putting up with me and sometimes my harebrained ideas, but hopefully we got a great project here to share. So, and I think we do. From what I've seen, it turned out really well. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to the class and let you guys introduce yourselves and get started.
Hey everyone, thanks for joining. My name is Caroline Tipton. I guess everyone can go ahead and start introducing themselves, and then we can go ahead and get started with the presentation.
I'm Eric Webb.
John Martin.
Les
Elliott. Sorry.
Okay, so for, I guess I'll just go ahead and read this and then we'll elaborate from here. So for our major web project, we came together to create a website for the Kansas State University Communication Sciences and Disorders Department. The purpose of this website was for the department's clinicians to use it as a tool for conducting speech therapy sessions. Skills we use to create this website include database management, programming, and web design. I know another thing I wanted to add to the skills here was definitely a huge shout out to Shay. You know, she created all of the pictures that you're going to see whenever we do the demonstration today. And then, you know, John, Wesley, and Eric and myself, we've all been, you know, doing a lot of the back end stuff. And I know everyone has had a very, or each person has had a very big part in what you guys are going to see here today. So this was our, here's a nice little graphic of our project timeline. You know, of course, starting in January and then working through the semester. Of course, everyone knows we hit a lot of different bumps along the way with, you know, school delays and everything. So, but we did pull through and we have this done. And you can see this was our first kind of brainstorming of what, you know, we wanted to get done and the dates that we had in mind. And then here was our this was our first day working on everything. As you see over here, we had a list of website names. We had what we wanted to do that day. And then of course, words that we had brainstormed and kind of just how we wanted the app to work. And then of course, if anyone from my group wants to chime in, you guys are welcome to chime in anytime. And then here are our use case descriptions. John or Wesley, do you guys want to kind of talk about those?
It's kind of hard to read. Can you zoom in on like one of them?
Maybe. I'm not sure.
It doesn't look like we'll be able to.
Whoops.
That helps, I guess. Yeah.
I guess that's a little bit bigger.
So yeah, just mainly going through what it is exactly that, for like the processes involved in a typical session between a clinician and a client, and the steps that we needed to put in there to make sure that they were able to achieve everything that they needed to with their clients. So like some of them we have up, removing a client from the web application system. With the primary actor as the clinician. So, you know, like when the client is done meeting with the clinician, like we decided they're not going to meet anymore, and the clinician goes into the our software and they remove the client. Yeah, and it's, yeah, the use cases. Wes, do you have anything else?
Oh, sorry.
No. They're good.
Nothing much aside from the fact that we had 6 use cases for the different processes in a typical usage of this program, or application, I should say.
Okay, so you saw our use cases, and then once we kind of did that, we wanted to make sure, or we went through and did the site map. We did just a few days, or a day or so ago, we did add, or today I think even, we added one more part here to this, but yeah, but this is the basics of what everything is. This is definitely the modified version. We did have an earlier version at the beginning of the semester, and then as we progressed, we did create this one later on, and then as we progressed even more, like I said last night or today, we created, or we had another path that we needed to add.
Yeah.
These are, what, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, Alex Windhorse and I put this sitemap together. And though he's not in the class anymore, he was a big help. So I wanted to mention him.
Yes, yeah, you're very right. He was. So I was kind of in charge of doing, kind of creating just the wireframes, and I know Shay and I brainstormed a lot about how we wanted things to look. We came up with these. Of course, you can see there's placeholders over here, placeholders for everything. And then this is kind of a snapshot of our code. This is whenever we were doing some major debugging the other night. I just want to say, you know, we worked a lot. There was a lot of good teamwork that happened during this project, and I'm really proud of everyone. We ran into a lot of things, but we got it all figured out in the end. And then we, Shay, do you kind of want to talk about your brainstorming for the logos?
Wow, I don't think there really was a whole lot of brainstorming with making the logo at all. I just figured it should, since they're, you know, it's for speech therapy, and I didn't really know, you know, and it was like K-State, I didn't know what else to really add to it. Like, you know, it didn't have anything fancy, and just basically just focused on, you know, typography. So like this one started off as a different font, but I made another one, and we decided, and it used this font with it for the login page, and decided to just collectively decided to just kind of make them more uniform across two, and then just, you know, add a couple lines and the little watercolor effect in the background. But yeah, that's really it, just kind of playing around with it.
Okay, let's see. Eric, do you want to take it from here and start sharing? Do you have that ready?
Yeah, I've got it pulled up. Give me just a second.
That's fine. I can stop sharing here.
Okay. Right, screen and desk share. Alrighty. So I'm not really sure where we want to start with this. I suppose I guess the best place to start is the login page, right? So getting to the page initially is going to take us to a login portal. One of the trickier parts of our project was that we have both like the professors who are acting as like kind of a supervisory role and clinicians that need to log into this. And given that I, at least in the past, had issues with Passport JS, making a login page was a little more difficult. So eventually I ended up scrapping that. I made it by hand. But I guess we'll start with a supervisor. So the supervisor can see the list of all the clinicians. Currently, we just have 2 because Caroline and I have been doing a lot of the debugging up to this point. So like I have a clinician, she has a clinician, that kind of thing. If we look at each of our clinician, like let's say that I wanted to edit something with this, like if I wanted to put like an actual Gmail, right? Like new email at Gmail, right? And if I update it, and I go back into there, we can see that oops, I spelled it wrong, but we can update all of our information as needed. If I try to delete the clinician, it'll let me do that if I need to. Then we've got a page here where we can add flashcards. This had been a little bit tricky just because, well, one, we need to get all of these different forms of the letter R into a dropdown, which, because of some ER diagram issues that we were having, I need to go through kind of last minute and make a couple separate tables to iron it out. Seems to be a recurring theme with our projects and ER diagram issues. But if I wanted to upload a picture, it checks to see if like if I wanted to upload this capture.png, for example, or this asteroid, because I know what that one looks like. I'm not sure what the capture is, but if I try and upload it and I call it asteroid, oops, and I create it, what'll happen is a flashcard is created in our database, and because it's not one of the more recent ones, it's going to be near the very, very end of this. Yes, so asteroid's there, and it does a couple of things for us. Notice that it stores the form ID, like what type of form of the letter R. In this case, I selected air initial. I suppose I probably isn't even the correct one, but you can change that with the drop-down menu. It also stores a link to the picture that was uploaded. So within our images folder, we can see that this asteroid.png is a new file. So if and when this is deployed, it will be able to handle receiving new pictures. Kind of enough with that, I suppose. Right, we can add a new clinician if we needed to. You'll probably remember on the login page, we had a username and password for our login. So the username is just how they log in, because let's say you have 2 clinicians and or you have a couple clinicians and 2 of them share a first name. That's why we didn't go with like a first name sort of login. We wanted a username. If I'll just call it test, because for simplicity's sake, make the password test. Then okay, so when we get down to this part here, we have we can create more supervisory roles. So like if Professor Atkin, right, like she's probably going to be a supervisory role, so we would check that if we were creating her. If she had anybody else that she wanted to have like the same kind of position as her, she would do that. Otherwise, we can pick a managing supervisor for that person. In my case, I'll go ahead, since we don't have a list page with all the supervisors, I'll go ahead and make this just a normal clinician so we can see this. So I'll create it. And then as we can see, we've got my new clinician here, new user, all that jazz. If I want to delete them and I click delete, it's gone. So that's kind of that's how the like supervisory page looks. Everything else, as we had mentioned with our use cases, deals mostly with the interaction between the clinician and the client. So if we were to log in as our clinician. We have a couple of clients. So we've got Caroline's client that she was using for debugging. We've got my client. I'm notably less creative, but let's say I wanted to update that. So if I wanted my person to be named, Eric client or something like that, I can change the date of birth if I wanted to as well. So let's say it was born December 10th, 2019. If I update it, we now have Eric client as opposed to new client, and the date of birth has been updated properly. Not that you'll be changing the date of birth much, I imagine, but if you ever accidentally put it in wrong or that kind of thing. I can choose to delete this client if I just so wanted to. Oh, and it's a good thing we didn't deploy this yet. So apparently we still have an issue with the delete function. We can go and find that later. But yeah, the update works. Not sure what I forgot to do for the delete. That's gonna bother me. But okay, so we have our client. If we were to start a session, right, at this point in our database, we have we've got this new session that's been created, and they've got these scores for correcting, kind of, sort of, partial, right? And then as we select a letter, and then we choose what form of the letter we want to show up, like let's say error initial, for example. That asteroids picture that I uploaded, it picks a random one out of the forms that we have. So since I had listed it as error initial, it came in. But let's say that I pronounce it correctly. If I hit correct, what are the odds, right? Since there's only 2 pictures in this one, I just happened to get lucky and get that again. Okay, so there's airplane. Notice that I was hitting the check mark. I don't know why my cursor isn't showing for some reason. So if we go to the database real quick and we refresh this, we've got a couple of things happening. So our total for the session right now, we have 2 correct at this point. So like for a grand number of attempts in a session, we can calculate that just by adding correct and incorrect and kind of together for that. But for the session, like the forms that we're tackling for the error initial, even though we've had a couple different pictures at this point, we got both of them correct, we're saying. So that is, 2 correct. If I wanted to say that I didn't get that one right, or this one I got kind of right. And I refresh it again. From the back end perspective, we've now got 1 kind of correct, 1 incorrect, and 2 correct. So it'll accurately keep track of scores. So we can go to different forms within the session too. So if I think AR medial has something, right? Yeah, so there's a heart. In the database, what that's going to look like now is if I refresh this, we're going to have 2 different forms in the session. So we've got AR initial and AR medial, and I hadn't answered correct, incorrect, or kind of yet. This is more just to prove that it's being created each time. But if I hit check mark and then kind of got arrow, not correct, right? If we refresh it now, we'll see that the scores are being updated, but only for the, like we still have the 211 for the error initial, but here we've got our 111 because that's all that I had gone through there. So it's going to keep track of each of these for each like form of the letter, right? Once we're done with this, since this is going to be on a tablet view and we wanted to make it kind of easy, we just have an end session button down here. So after they click it, it'll display like a way to go because our target audience, at least for clients, is going to be like 4 to 9 years of age. Like they're young, so a way to go means a little more to them than it might to you or me. But once they're done there, they can hit continue, and it's going to bring them back to this client list where they can, let's say my client just came in and we finished, and then we could go to Caroline's client and just pick up with them, or we could always log out because the session's over. So that's kind of the way that ends up getting shown there. I suppose I should probably show off the report, shouldn't I? So since we had done that under my client, if we look at the reports, ooh boy, we thought we had that working. Right. We had that working. My guess is, oh, in our, I think I had accidentally unlinked something earlier when we were doing our reports, or when we were debugging earlier.
So
Okay.
when you would click on that reports page, it would bring up, it'll bring up where it says there are no sessions. It would bring up a list by
Of
date.
dates.
So it would have the date, and then once you would click on the date, then it would pull up what you saw on the date on the database side, where it had the form of the R, and then how many was correct, incorrect, and kind of, and then of course the number of opportunities. So that's kind of how that ends up working in the end.
Yeah, I'm not sure where I ended up breaking that. It was working last night, so my guess is we were having some issues getting the scoring system to, increment this morning, and my guess is in the debugging process, I might have accidentally gone and unhooked something. So we could go and find that, because as I said, we had it working yesterday, so it's a couple, probably just a line or two that I need to fix, and it'll work like it's intended to. Same with the delete, because I know that was working like 2 weeks ago. So the fact that it isn't now is just a sign that I did something somewhere in the debugging process and unlinked it there. But yeah, overall we're pretty proud of how it came out. Needless to say, when we came into the presentation, we had gotten on this morning to do some final debugging, and we were satisfied with it, and we had gotten off. We didn't realize that there were a couple new issues that had popped up, obviously, but we're very, very proud of this. Unlike our previous projects like, Twist, we actually have this working. Twist, partially worked for those of you who remember that one. But this one is, as I said, a line or two probably needs to be corrected for each one of those functions, and this page will be functioning 100% as it was intended to.
Okay, awesome. Great job, guys. So I'm going to let the client, aka my wife, Dr. Atkin, if you want to go ahead and give any feedback, ask questions, I'll let you go ahead and have the first round here.
Is there a way to see the different graphics? Or do you have to go in and play?
So we don't have a page at the moment that shows like every single flashcard that we have.
Okay.
That's something that could be implemented in the future. In fact, that would probably be a good idea. Yeah, at this point we were thinking more of like control, just because like what pictures you're putting in there. So if you just had like a file somewhere with all of your pictures that you had uploaded, that kind of thing could work. But yeah, we could probably implement. Well, I know we could implement a instead of an add flashcard, we could have like another button down below it that said view flashcards, and it would be a for loop. It just list every single flashcard in our database. It'd be kind of a long page, but yeah, we could do something like that.
Okay. Oh, it looks good.
Well, thank you.
Was there anything you needed us to demonstrate again or kind of go over again?
Do you have the lists of kind of the different positions? I saw that briefly, but it was just on the screen for a second, of the R's and the different positions.
Oh, yes. So let me go to add a flashcard. So when we're creating a flashcard, we have a drop down that has all 21 different forms of R. And granted, when I was making it, it was me making it, so it made sense to me. So like most of these, like the or initial or medial final, those make sense. But maybe like the R prevocalic might not be as obvious if you're not looking for that. But yeah, so there were those. Were you talking about this list, or were you talking about like the page that had like a big table with them all?
Yeah.
Yeah, let's go back to that.
That was
Okay.
somewhere. I saw it briefly.
Yeah, sorry. I was kind of speeding through. You can tell I'm a little nervous, right? So our clinician, when they go to start a session, and we built this to be dynamic. So in the future, like if there was ever like a need to add like S sounds or T, because R isn't the only thing that people have issues with sometimes. But under here we have this table. with the different forms of the R's.
Yeah.
Which it's kind of hard to see since my cursor isn't like, for whatever reason, showing. But like, since this is ideally going to be done from a tablet, all they need to do is just tap on the box that they're wanting. So, air initial or, IR medial, we got pirate, So you can go
Nice.
back and change forms. And so then that way in a session, like if you wanted to focus, okay, well, we want to tackle these 4 sessions today. Let's start with this one. You go through it a little bit and you can change it, change the form and yeah.
Very nice. Thank you. I know that was a lot of work.
Yeah, there were a lot of challenges that it threw us that we weren't expecting initially. And as you can see, some of them still threw us issues even during the presentation today. But they're different issues than the ones we've been having. So I wouldn't mind sitting down to figure them out because I at least know what they should be doing and have a good guess why they're not working. But without looking at it, but yeah.
Hey, Eric, just a suggestion on that table that you were showing there.
Oh,
That
yes.
might be a good format for being able to look all the pictures that are associated with all those. So if you had it on a different menu that
Oh,
didn't
so you're
use the
thinking
same
like a view
format.
flashcard and then it has that same sort of table and you could click on it to see all of them. And
Yeah, see
I
all of
like
them
that.
in that form. Then that would be consistent with whoever's using this. They would be used to that menu.
Okay. Yeah, that's not a bad idea.
Okay. So
Hi, this
I'll
is Sue, and
yeah.
Michael, I think I have a question for you, actually. I believe this is intended as an internal site, but are there still standards for K-State fonts and colors that
The
that people
branding,
are
yeah.
supposed to use even for
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. What's kind of the idea is we would, or my wife and some of her grad students would just do some internal testing with the app first, just to kind of get all the wrinkles ironed out. And then once it'd be in more of a polished stage, we could add in like the K-State branding to it with the logos. And,
Oh, okay. Just wanted to make sure that the students knew that that was always a consideration, probably.
Yep. Yep. So yeah, any other questions from faculty, staff, guests that we have?
So Eric, you mentioned that this went better as far as getting to completion than it did your project you did last semester with Twist. So what kind of things did you learn from your project doing Twist that helped you be successful this semester?
We learned a lot from Twist. Twist, I don't think I'm exaggerating when I say we all hated the project, but it was very, very good in terms of showing us what sorts of things we need to be doing. Like when we had gotten through with Twist, I know at least myself still wasn't entirely sure like how routes and controllers and everything were handling stuff. It was all sort of like still kind of the in between magic and understanding phase. Um, so part of this worked a lot better just because we knew how to send variables to the page more efficiently. Because during the Twist project, I personally had no idea how we were supposed to be doing that or how that worked. Twist also really showed us that communication is really, really important, and that got put to the test really this semester when in-person got canceled. We all had to do this from home, and I know for me at least there's always temptations when I'm at home rather than like, in a classroom to, I can sleep in a little bit or, I don't need to be doing this, after all, we're not even meeting, right? There's a lot of distractions that could have happened. But because we had done Twist, I knew that like last semester when we were down to the wire, we were working like, all day, every single day for like that last week trying to get things working. And we ended up not getting there. And I think part of it was if we had had a little more time last semester, we probably could have do it. But this semester, we had the entire semester. So time wasn't really going to be an excuse I was happy with. So when I created the GitHub repository in February, I had been making commits on stuff for future problems down the line. Like I had a like what I thought would increment the score each time we click correct, incorrect, and whatever. I had that ready like a month ago. Now, granted, of course, when we finally got to it, it was full of bugs. Partly just because as we were designing the rest of the page, it was, you know, expecting things that we hadn't done, or it was expecting or it didn't want things that we had done. You know, all sorts of issues. But it was Twist showed us to think ahead and to think smart about what we're doing. So then that way we can get through the rest of the project without like we had to be real thoughtful on like session variables, for example, like how to check if somebody's logged in, because last semester we had hard coded a login and stored those, like the username and password, as session variables, which besides being a best practice nightmare, is not particularly secure. In this project, I knew better how to use session variables, so for some of our pages, data that wasn't being passed into the URL was being used as session variables. So our controllers had to be consistent on when they're creating them and when they're destroying those variables. But again, all that's possible because we failed a lot in Twist and knew what to do better this time.
All right, thank you. I'd like to hear from some of your teammates on their perspective of the project and the team dynamics.
Well,
Not everybody
in
wants.
which case, I think we could probably do that and go into a bit of detail about our individual contributions to the project as well. Firstly, I would definitely reinstate how teamwork is a great factor for these sorts of projects, and it was handled a lot better in this project than in Twist. The issue back in Twist was our general inability to communicate with one another. We didn't really have much of a system put in place until towards the end of that project, when it was just a simple group chat. Whereas for this project, it was the in-class discussions, and after the whole pandemic gobbledygook began, we started using Zoom for our meetings. And as for my contributions to this project, in pre-development, I focused a fair bit on word lists. There were a few word lists that I had stumbled across from browsing the internet in free time well before this project even began, and it just so happened that it could be a viable reference. It's just a matter of looking through these lists, sorting out the R's, sorting those words even further down to much simpler words that elementary schoolers would most likely know. Nothing political, nothing religious, etc. And in the development phase, I kind of took on a bit of a wild card role, bits and pieces everywhere. The occasional little bit of a function, several views, and generally any spelling goofs, OCD fixes that I had caught at the time. One of the latest ones I did towards the end was you'll have noticed that in the clinician and client views, how the blue buttons are not touching the nav bar. That was a fairly recent fix, because before then those blue buttons, that blue button for instance, would have been up touching the nav bar, which quite frankly would have looked a bit unneat, unsightly. That was just easily fixed by coding a line break in the view file. And of course the other stuff I did was was taking part in the recent meetings with Eric and Caroline to take care of the controllers, the functionality and stuff. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and cease my talk. Let someone else explain their perspectives and contributions.
All right, well, I'll go.
Oh, go ahead.
You,
Go ahead,
okay.
John.
A lot of my work was done in the pre-phase, honestly. Coronavirus has not been kind to my transition. I helped put like I said, I sat down with Alex and we got the site map put all together, laid everything out the way we wanted it. There was a little bit of miscommunication there because Alex left the group, and him and I understood the site map, and I had to take some time to deal with all of my classes. So there was a gap there with communication. And then once I started, getting back to class, we got the site map remade. I worked with everybody else in the group, and we got it into a better format that everybody could understand. And that, I feel like that was a really good experience, making sure that the site map and wireframe and what am I thinking? The database model, making sure that you put it together in such a way that it not only makes sense to you, but if somebody else were to walk onto your team and look at it, that they would be able to read it and understand it without having to talk to you. So that's something I learned moving forward. I also helped put together the database models. During the development phase, a lot of the help that I did was debugging, because I just have a knack for it. So that's where I decided to apply myself. Yeah, that's mainly my contributions. Shay?
Thanks, John. All right. So yeah, for perspective wise, I guess I would agree with everyone else that we learned a lot from doing Twist, and so we had a lot, better view of what to expect in this semester with this project. Thankfully, with this project, I didn't have to touch code at all, which thank you guys. You did really, really great and much better than I could have ever done with code. So
you're welcome.
So since I was the only digital media student in the group, I focused on the illustrations. I felt really ambitious at first. I'm like, I could totally make all these, different illustrations by hand, which I had never done before and had no experience doing. And but that list got longer and longer the more we found out about this project. And so yeah, and we were just running out of time, so I had to go to Creative Commons websites and find illustrations there that I could take and try and add a background, a slight background to just kind of make it more uniform across the ones that I'd already made. I also came up with the final list of the words that we'd be using since I'd be illustrating them. I helped come up with the words that we'd be using for those. That's basically it.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think as a group, we definitely applied everyone in their, their niches, and I think that that was really beneficial to how everything played out. I think everyone, yeah, as everyone has said, we all have learned a lot. I was kind of the liaison between the group and the client. So whenever, we'd have questions or, would come across something that we weren't really sure about, instead of having everyone send an email, I was the one that kind of sent the email for the group. And then of course, relayed the answers back to everyone. And then I created all of these front end pages, the view pages. And then of course, I would create these, and then Eric and I would go through and implement actually what was going to be shown. So, you know, all the functions and how we got all the information on those pages. I don't really know what else to say about what I did. I mean, it was kind of a here, there, and everywhere. You know, everyone had their specific jobs, but then everyone also came together and helped each other out. So,
if I could comment real quick, Caroline did a large. Caroline's a large reason that this project succeeded, in my mind. She took on a big role of responsibility and leadership, and made sure that everybody was on track, and really took you know, like she spearheaded making sure that everybody stayed on what they were doing. And I just wanted to make sure that everybody else, you know, all the faculty knows how much that Caroline did for this project.
thank you, Don.
I agree.
Yes, Caroline was our hero, our mascot, and our leader.
I don't know
Our
if I felt
project
that much, but
manager.
okay.
Well, I thought, this is Mike Pritchard. I was listening to it. I don't have any questions, but I do have a general comment as I was listening to it and listening to you guys go through it. I think what was really pretty impressive anyway was it. You guys know my industry background. I've sat in on basically everything on both sides of the house, both on the being the consultant that's developing something for a client, but then also being the client that's listening to someone present something to you. And I've heard it. I've done it badly and I've done it good, but then I've also been on the receiving end of it where, you know, I've contracted out to have someone do some work for me and then it's gone badly. And so I've heard quite a bit of a lot of different ways that it was done. And I think what impressed me the most was that it had that corporate flavor and feel, just the back and forth, everything about it, you know, the whole thing. And it was done well, it was executed well. You guys had a plan. You had clearly defined roles. You know, you didn't have a client that was coming and yelling at you. Of course, that's always good. But but I thought it had a really good. If you take anything away from it, it's pretty representative of what you'd find in a corporate environment. So I thought you guys did great. So that's just kind of my 2 cents.
Thank you. Yeah, it was a little bit challenging because, like, in person, if we were still meeting in the classroom, it'd be slightly easier, at least to, you know, if somebody's having an issue with, you know, a function or a page or something not displaying properly, you know, we could just turn our chair and look at their screen. Through Zoom, it's kind of hard to see what everybody's doing because only one person can share at a time. So that, at least I feel like it kind of slowed us down a little bit, just because, like, you know, if I know what should be being done in one window, but I'm needing to work on another window, it's hard for me to go back and forth and say, oh yeah, you're just missing this. Or then the other difficult part too is that, you know, we showed both the front, like, you know, the page itself, as well as some of the code and, like, you know, the database and how it was receiving everything, which I feel like we wouldn't do in a normal presentation, but because we're making a presentation to both, you know, our the CMST faculty and the client, we kind of had to combine them. Yeah, I feel like in a normal case we wouldn't have to, but I think we made it work.
Yeah, it was definitely a lot of adaptation from what we were used to. And then, of course, all of a sudden it was, you're not in school anymore and this is how we have to do it. And yeah, adaptation would be a huge thing that we definitely had to go through. But we definitely overcame and pulled through. So.
Yeah, and that's a good point. At the same time, so many teams are decentralized that a lot of the teams these days, you know, you're working at Microsoft, if you're working at Apple, if you're working at a Facebook, they're not in a centralized place, right? And that you'll have teams that are decentralized. So it's pretty common to kind of go through what you guys went through, which I think is a great experience for you guys to see, because you'll bump into this in terms of having these matrix teams where people are all over the globe.
Yeah, I don't think it was a bad thing for us to have to do it. It was our first time doing it, which made it a little uncomfortable, but yeah.
Okay. So just a couple more comments from me. So I've been doing this class. See, this is the fourth one. And I'd say this is probably the best project that has come out of the class so far. I think you guys did a great job. It kind of seemed like a simple, application at the get-go, but as you could tell, once you got into it, things got more complicated, which is good because I think you guys got great experience from that and were able to handle that and, work around the problems and the issues to come up with solutions. So, but yeah, you guys did a great job. I think now probably what we'll do is I'll let you guys debug a few more things to kind of get it polished, and then yeah, I think we'll then turn it over to the client. So I guess Jaredy, this would be then something that you would work. You said you might have a couple grad students that'll do some trials with this to start off with. Okay. And then, so kind of the unique thing too is this might work great for the speech clinicians because they're doing teletherapy now since they can't actually do therapy in person with their clients. They have to do teletherapy. So this being a web application will be hopefully a great tool that they can try out and use doing teletherapy. So yeah. Hopefully you guys will keep in touch and kind of follow up and let you know how the application's working with the grad clinicians. So it'll be a great piece for you guys to put in your portfolio for sure. Alrighty. Anything else from anybody before we log off here? Okay. So I think all of you guys are in the portfolio reviews. That's Professor Pritchard's group here. So Mike, when does that start?
That kicks off at, let's see, a lot of you guys are in there. It'll be kicking off at 3:30.
Okay. And I think we're using the same link here. We'll just use the waiting room and let each of you in one at a time, since these are more between you personally and the professors. So
yeah, that'll work. That's perfect.
Okay, awesome.
Awesome.
All right, well, thank you everybody
everyone for joining.
Great job, guys.
Yep, good job.
Thanks for coming.
Not everyone.
Did we want to get together real quick and try and fix those last couple of issues that popped up there?
Yeah, do we just want to use the Zoom link we've been using?
Yeah, let's go ahead and use that one.
Okay. All right.
I'll see you guys here in a couple minutes. And
yeah, when you guys get that done, I extended out the due date on the Canvas. So once everything's finalized, just send me the GitHub, the repository for it.
Okay.
And we'll take it from there then.
Okay.
Oh, and then make sure to upload the presentation PowerPoint or slides or whatever those were.
Okay. Yeah, I know either Shay or I can do that. So.
Okay.
Did you want us all to upload those slides, or did you just want one of us to?
Just one of you.
Okay.
Okay, Shay. I know Shay owns that, or she did that. So if you want to do
Yeah,
that,
I can go ahead and do that.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, sweet. Team, I guess we'll see each other in just a minute then.
Yeah, sounds good.
All right. Thank you, guys.